The Catholic Church had a pretty big influence on how medieval Europe was run. And at the center of all of that was the Pope. So how did the Pope control medieval Europe? Well, through a combination of wealth, power, and a whole lot of land. As the head of the Catholic Church, the Pope was considered to be the successor of St. Peter and, more importantly, the one true vicar of Christ on earth. And that meant he was pretty damn powerful. The Pope had the power to depose kings and queens, as well as the power to absolve people of their sins. That meant that the Pope could influence the actions of not just the common folk, but also the most powerful rulers in Europe. The popes of the 12th and 13th centuries were especially powerful, and that's because they controlled a lot of land. At one point, the Catholic Church owned about a third of all the land in Europe, and much of that land was in the hands of the Pope directly. In fact, the Papal States were one of the most powerful states in Italy during the Renaissance. They even had their own army, which they used to great effect during the 1325 Papal War. So with all this power and wealth, it's no wonder that the Pope was able to control medieval Europe. I mean, he literally had the power to bless or curse the rulers of the most powerful kingdoms in Europe. And he wasn't afraid to use it. For example, during the investiture controversy of the 11th century, the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV were at each other's throats over who had the right to appoint bishops in Germany. And as a result, the Pope issued a bull, basically an official statement, declaring that Henry had been deposed as emperor. Now, technically, this didn't remove Henry from power. He was still the ruler of Germany and the king of Italy, but it did weaken his authority considerably. And it showed the Pope that it was possible to remove a powerful ruler from power. And the Pope wasn't done yet! Oh, no! He would go on to issue similar bulls deposing other rulers, including King John of England and James II of Scotland. And while those two rulers were eventually restored to power, it's clear that the Pope had considerable power over the rulers of medieval Europe. In addition to deposing rulers, the Pope also had the power to absolve people of their sins. And that meant that he could influence how people behaved. I mean, if you knew that the Pope could forgive you for any sin, you'd probably try to live a better life. And that's exactly what the Church hoped would happen. They encouraged people to confess their sins to priests, who would then absolve them of those sins in the name of the Pope. This created a system in which the Pope had considerable power over the spiritual lives of the people of medieval Europe. And that power was used to great effect during the Inquisition, when the Catholic Church was trying to stamp out heresy. Heretics were people who went against the teachings of the Church, and during the Inquisition, they were often tortured into confessing their sins. And the threat of torture was enough to keep many people in line. So there you have it. The Pope was able to control medieval Europe through a combination of wealth, power, and land. He was the spiritual leader of Europe, and he used that position to great effects. Thanks for watching.